All-Star Weekend. You know what I'm going to lead the show off of by what I'm wearing. Sorry for the podcast audience. I'll explain in a few minutes. But also going to discuss the NBA 75 anniversary celebration that they did at halftime in Cleveland. It was awesome. I got chills, loved every second of it. And I'll discuss something I took away from it that maybe a lot of people are interpreting a certain way, but I certainly interpret it in a way that I want to share with y'all. As well as, and I feel like this has not been that big of a story, maybe because of the All-Star game and the pleasantries and everything. Chris Paul's out 2 months. So I'm going to discuss that. To me, that is a really crucial blow to the Phoenix Suns, certainly in terms of them getting the 1 seed. Hopefully they'll get him back by the playoffs, so hopefully for him a speedy recovery, as well as Klutch Sports apparently is very frustrated with the general manager of the Lakers, Rob Pelinka. And I can't wait to dive into this because, Lakers dysfunction in general just makes me happy. But there's a real hypocrisy going on behind this that I will dive into later in the show. And also discuss the whole Juwan Howard incident. It's crazy. But first, by what I'm wearing, you probably know where I'm going with this. Last night was a great night for the NBA. Got to honor the 75 greatest players of all time. Obviously, some are no longer with us. But the ones that were, not all of them were there. Tim Duncan, Steve Nash, Bill Russell. Some of them weren't there. But the vast majority of the great players on the list were in Cleveland, Ohio at the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse to be honored at halftime. It was a great ceremony and everything. You got the All-Stars. You got LeBron coming back to his hometown. And you got DeMar DeRozan, the MVP season he's having. And Joel Embiid. By the way, how well did Joel Embiid play last night? Wow. I think he had like 33, 35 points, something like that. He was dominating. Argument can be made he's the MVP today. And Giannis and all the stars and all of the greatest players ever. We're talking LeBron. We're talking Jordan, Magic Johnson and Kareem and Jerry West and everybody. And a 6'3" guard from Davidson outshone them all. Wardell Stephen Curry II. I told y'all on Friday he was going to win All-Star MVP. I told y'all, go back and check the film at the end of Friday's show. I told y'all that this man was going to get this MVP, the Kobe Bryant. By the way, how great was that trophy? It was unbelievable, and I'll get to your comments in just a second, Grady. So I appreciate you showing up because you make a good point. But I was kind of watching that, and when you're talking about one of the all-time All-Star performances. If it's not the greatest, it's in the top 2 or 3. There is no question about that. Steph Curry last night, 17 for 30 from the field, 16 for 27 from 3. The previous record for threes made in an All-Star game was Paul George. He had 9. Steph had 16. And to top it off, 50 of them. 50 points, only 2 points shy of the All-Star record. Steph was clearly going for it to try and win the game. I'm thinking, man, he's got to get that 53. He wasn't able to quite break that plateau, but nevertheless, an unbelievable night for the 2-time MVP. And to me, what really perfectly represented what Steph did last night. There was a point in that game. I was watching a little bit of TBS broadcast with the Inside the NBA crew, but I was mostly watching the regular TNT broadcast. And Allen Iverson, the great Allen Iverson, was on with Kevin Harlan, Reggie Miller, and Dwayne Wade calling the game. Allen Iverson came in, sat in between Reggie and D. Wade, and they were calling the game. And Steph was hitting shot after shot. And again, we're talking about Reggie Miller, who's one of the 3 greatest shooters of all time. We're talking about Allen Iverson, one of the greatest point guards of all time, and a stone cold killer. And we're talking about Dwayne Wade, who in my view is the 4th greatest shooting guard of all time behind Michael, Kobe, and Jerry West. And they were losing their minds on the sideline calling that game. I mean, the whole kind of the still shot of them like locking arms and just going nuts, like that's going to become a meme. They couldn't believe what they were watching. These are the greatest players of all time. These are Hall of Fame guys. And they could not believe what they were seeing. Steph Curry, at one point in the third quarter, hit not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5. 3-point shots in a row, some of them from like 40 feet out. I mean, he was pulling, he had a heat check. He literally pulled it from behind half court to see how hot he was. And I guess he tried to bank and it didn't quite go in. But that was historic, what he pulled off last night. And to me, if you ask me, I talked about Giannis last week and the disrespect that Giannis gets. And if you ask me today, what is the day? February 21st. Happy President's Day, everybody. February 21st, 2022, who the 3 greatest basketball players on this planet are? I'd say from 1 to 3 in order, from the top to number 3, Giannis, LeBron, Steph. By the end of this season, so mid-June, Steph will pass both. And by mid-June, he will be recognized as the best basketball player on earth. And here's why. I'm giving LeBron just a slight edge over Steph because LeBron's one of the 2 greatest players ever. That's number 1. Number 2, he's having a phenomenal year, dragging a below-average Lakers team to just, right at the playoff bubble. LeBron's been phenomenal. You saw how he played against Utah last week before the All-Star break. Whether it's Golden State that plays the Lakers, and please, Lord, please give me a Golden State and Lakers series. I really want us to be the team that knocks the Lakers out. I love LeBron, can't stand the Lakers. But LeBron's getting knocked out in the first round because his team is not good enough. Steph's going to get past the first round. There's no question about that. They're going to be, at worst case, the 2 or 3 seed. They're winning at least one playoff series. I think they're winning the whole darn thing. And speaking of that, Milwaukee's winning the Eastern Conference. With all due respect to Chicago, to Miami, who I think is their biggest threat, Brooklyn, stop it with Brooklyn. I know they got Goran Dragic today. They can't play defense. It cost them last year. Why am I supposed to believe the story is going to be any different this year? And there was even more chaos with the Nets, and they're the 8 seed right now. Milwaukee's coming out of the East. They're going to meet Golden State. And as great as Giannis is, and as I told you just a second ago, I think he's the best player in the world right now. But I'm a big believer of the phrase. It's a little cliche, but to be the best, you got to beat the best. At this time last year, I believe that Kevin Durant was the greatest basketball player on earth. But Giannis beat him in the second round, and Giannis played outstanding in doing so. And when it really mattered, in overtime of Game 7, Giannis outplayed KD on both ends of the floor. KD went 0 in overtime, despite scoring almost 50 points in the first 4 quarters. I'm not trying to diminish KD's, masterpiece, but he came up small in overtime. Giannis did not. Giannis beat KD, went on to win Finals MVP, and did so with a 50-point game to close out the Finals and win his first championship and winning his first Finals MVP. Steph's going to meet Giannis in the Finals, and I believe that after getting robbed twice of Finals MVP, 2015, 2018, Steph should have won Finals MVP both years. He'll outplay Giannis. Golden State will win in 6 or 7 games. And Steph Curry, at that point, will have 4 titles, 2 MVPs, 1 being unanimous. This December, he already officially became the greatest 3-point shooter of all time. And by mid-June, he will be the best basketball player on earth. Whether he beats LeBron or not, he'll surpass him because that will be 2 straight years. Love LeBron. But this is going to be 2 straight years where LeBron's Lakers go out in the first round. And then Steph will meet the defending champs Bucks in the finals, and they will take them out. That is what I believe is going to happen. But last night, a masterpiece, one of the greatest all-star performances by an individual player we've ever seen. 50 points by Wardell Stephen Curry II. We've got quite a few comments here. Some about the NBA 75 halftime sort of ceremony they have for these great players. Grady says, do you think the Ray Allen KG beef is stupid at this point? That Boston team, after losing in Miami in the 2012 Eastern Conference Finals, wasn't winning any darn championship. I don't know. I think if they had beaten the Heat, they would have beaten Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City, man, they were kids. I get it's KD, Westbrook, and Harden all on one team, but they were babies. How old was KD? Like 24? I mean, he was like the oldest of the group. I think he and Harden are around the same age. So, and he said with or without Ray Allen. But yeah, do I think the beef is stupid? Absolutely. If you saw last night, they honored Kevin Garnett. He went up on the stage with the other players. And then later they honored Ray Allen. We know the beef between the two. Ray Allen left the Celtics to go to the Heat, ended up winning a championship in 2013. And as Ray Allen was walking by, KG literally looks right up in the air, like, I'm not even going to look at you. So yeah, yes, I do think it's stupid. Grady also says Steph is the real deal. His legacy goes to another level when they win the chip this season. What a performance, honestly, in an All-Star game. John, they say an emoji says 1,000 words. John's got the eyeballs emoji. Like, I guess he thinks I'm either throwing out a hot take or I'm bold. One of the two, maybe both. But and Grady says the one caveat to them winning the chip is I think Golden State needs Draymond to win it all. If they have to defend Giannis, they can get it done. If they have him to defend Giannis, they can get it done. They have to have Draymond. I 1,000% agree with you. They cannot win the championship without Draymond Green. And the reports are he's going to be back about the same time that James Wiseman is going to make his debut this season, around mid-March. So a couple weeks or so, Draymond should be back. He'll get back in basketball shape. He was playing outstanding before the injury happened. So get him back in basketball shape over the next month and a half. And once he gets to the playoffs, he'll be ready to go. Clay will, really have his legs by that point, and the Warriors will be ready to take off. But yeah, the one caveat in general is they got to stay healthy. Of course, there's no question about that. You got to stay healthy in order to win a championship. And I think if Milwaukee and Golden State both stay healthy, they're winning it. I mean, Golden State just got an injury break yesterday. Chris Paul's out 6 to 8 weeks. So, I mean, we'll see, whenever he comes back. But this could be a major break for the Warriors. Do they catch Phoenix 6.5 games back with 25 to go? That's gonna be really tough. They do play the Suns later next month. So, that could certainly be a pivotal game. Phoenix is going to need Devin Booker to carry him for a while, but I'll get to that a little later on in the show, the whole Chris Paul story, because I don't think it's been talked about enough. Like, when we talk about valuable and I talk about the MVP discussion, I always emphasize the word valuable. Chris Paul's in that group. Like, Chris Paul is one of the most valuable players in basketball. There's no question about that. The impact he has on a team is unbelievable. John just says, Green thinking about the second half of his career. Well, he signed with TNT. He was on the TBS broadcast last night. He was interviewing some of the players. I think he is. Draymond's not a guy that I think is going to play to 40. I think Steph wants to. I think to a certain degree Clay wants to. Not to say Draymond doesn't take care of his body or anything like that, but Draymond's game, because he's not athletically gifted whatsoever, his game is based off of his basketball IQ, which is, through the roof. And so that won't go away. But once his physical abilities leave him, like it leaves every player, what kind of guy will he be? He's like, 32, 33 years old. So, he is getting up there in age. But, I still think he's got another 2 to 3 good years left in him. Maybe he'll retire in 5 to 6. And Grady says, do you feel like Philly might have something to say about the Bucks coming out of the East? My issue with Philadelphia, I said a couple weeks ago when the whole Brooklyn-Philly trade went down, I think Philly won the trade. Yes, did they lose depth? Absolutely. But did they get a guard who fits better with their best player? Well, 1,000%. And so, you obviously get a scorer, spaces the floor more for Joel Embiid. So, but my thing, I said, 3 things are going to derail the Philadelphia 76ers season. Number 1 is Joel Embiid's health. There's not been one point in his NBA career where he's went a whole way through and not had some type of significant injury. He was going to win the MVP last year. He was certainly on pace to do it. And he got hurt and missed a long time, which cleared the way for Nikola Jokic to win the award. I didn't think Jokic should have won it, but that's neither here nor there. Embiid did not win the award because he got hurt and missed so much time. He's been healthy this season. Going to knock on wood for him. Hopefully that continues. And then the other 2 things are, first of all, James Harden's inability to perform at a high level in the postseason. It's happened time and time again. And number 3, James Harden, as I talked about last week, does not get along well with the star teammates. I mean, his best friend, Russell Westbrook, didn't get along with him in Houston. So I'm going to be interested to see how this goes. Grady says, I could see Draymond walking away in a few years and replacing Charles Barkley on TNT. And that's the thing. Chuck, I read an article that he talked about, I think his contract with TNT expires in 2 years. And he pretty much said, like, once that contract expires, I'm out. Like, I want to enjoy retirement. I don't want to be up here, 80, 85 years old, still doing TV. Like, I want to enjoy retirement. And hey, listen, I totally get that. But Draymond would kind of be the perfect, replacement for Chuck. No one's ever going to fully, replace the on-screen, television persona of Charles Barkley. Nobody's going to do that. But if there was one current player I had to pick to do so, it'd be Draymond Green. The smack talking, undersized player who was kind of an overachiever. It kind of obviously high basketball IQ. So Draymond's already been a great addition to the show. So, as he's on TV, he's only going to get better and better and better. But hopefully he's not on TV with the guys until after the finals are over. That's what and Grady says, especially after they win another one, talking about the Warriors. And again, I don't think he would retire after this year, but certainly in the next 2 to 3, again, it depends on how he ages as a player. I mean, that's what's all going to come down to. Then again, doesn't always come down to that. All right. Shifting now, I don't know how much college basketball I've talked at all this season. Obviously my Tennessee Volunteers, I didn't check the AP poll today. I know we were like 16th, but we lost to Arkansas on Saturday. I want to check this real quick because we beat Kentucky last week. It was a huge win for us. Only dropped a spot to 17th, and I'm sure the committee took into account the fact that they did beat number 4 ranked Kentucky at home. But my Vols are playing really good basketball right now, and I think have a shot to possibly make a run in the tournament. But to another team, another college basketball powerhouse that hasn't had a successful year this year as they did last year, and that would be the Michigan Wolverines, who took on the Wisconsin Badgers yesterday. And, it was kind of your typical, Wisconsin kind of outplayed Michigan. There's no question about that. Again, Wisconsin's ranked 15th. Michigan isn't ranked. And with 14 seconds left, the Wisconsin coach, Greg Gard, I believe is his name, he called a timeout with about 5 seconds left. It went his team up 14. And he said he wanted to, run a play so his team could learn to break the press, which I don't really get that. You got, isn't that kind of what practice is for? So I'm not really sure what that's about. But Juwan Howard took exception to it. And the two had a war of words, and then Juwan Howard swung at Greg Gard, and then there was an altercation between the two teams. They came to defend their coaches, and so then the two teams started to fight. It was not a good look for college basketball. It was an ugly scene. Thankfully, it didn't appear nobody got terribly injured. So that's good. But my immediate takeaway on the whole situation is both coaches should be suspended for at least a month. At least. Because you cannot have an instance... to me in college basketball, it's different than pros. If, let's just say, I don't know, Steve Kerr and he would never fight Greg Popovich because A, Greg Popovich is like 75 years old, and B, Popovich mentored Steve Kerr. Let's say Steve Kerr got into an altercation with, I don't know, Steve Nash. Like, let's just say Steve Kerr, Steve Nash, they got in, they after a game, Steve Nash didn't like what Steve Kerr did, and so they were jawing at one another, and they got into a fight, and then the Nets and the Warriors got into a fight. Like, I would say suspend Kerr and Nash for 2 weeks or so, and obviously fine them. But in this instance, this is college basketball, so college athletics in general, basketball in this instance. The coaches are not just meant to develop the players, because some are going to play at the next level. There's no question. Like you they're 4-star, 5-star recruits. They're going to play at the next level. And even the guys that aren't, destined for professional sports, you still want to develop them, get the most out of them that you can. But the vast majority of them are not going to make the pros. And so you want to help them develop as men or as women, right? And you want to sort of teach them how to be an adult in your own way as a coach. And so the example, listen, it wasn't Bobby Knight bad. Bobby Knight was, but it wasn't that bad. Well, they weren't throwing chairs and choking players. Like it wasn't that extreme. But that was not a good look for Wisconsin or for Michigan. So my takeaway is suspend the two for at least a month. And John says Howard getting the rest of the year off. Thing is, he did swing. He threw a punch at Greg Gard. And so, to me, at least a month. I don't think I'm going to go into the extreme of, say, the whole season. That very well may be what the NCAA does, is say, hey, Both of you, you're gone for the year. Juwan Howard certainly will be more likely to be the case. But listen, to be blunt, these two got to grow up. Okay, you know I'm not a fan of unwritten rules in sports. Like you hear my rants all the time on baseball, and Grady says, I don't see what the issue is. I do that all the time in 2K up 40. Yeah, hey, listen, you gotta play hard till the buzzer sounds. But you know me, I hate unwritten rules. Like when there was a game years ago, I always use this example, where it was the Iron Bowl. Alabama and Auburn were playing. And Auburn was up 2 touchdowns with under 2 minutes left. And they could run out the clock. So the conventional thing is just take a knee, get the game over with, and that's that. But no, Auburn, Alabama, it's one of the biggest rivalries in sports. And Auburn played to score, and they scored. And Alabama fans and college football fans were like, that's not the right way to play the game. You take a knee. They asked Nick Saban after the game what he thought. You know what Nick Saban said? We should have stopped him. We stopped him. Nobody's complaining. And they didn't beat us by 3 touchdowns. They just beaten us by 2. Same thing in college basketball. Listen, if I'm in Greg Gard's position as Wisconsin, if I'm up 14 with 5 seconds left, am I calling a timeout? No, I'm not calling a timeout. I mean, my mentality is just get the game over with, shake everybody's hand, and let's move on. He felt the need to disagree with it wholeheartedly, but that was his decision. But then Juwan Howard, if he has an issue with it, fine. Okay, if they have a little war of words, that's that. But once it gets into sort of a physical altercation, that's a different story. It's a bad look for the 2 programs. It's a bad example for the kids. And I think the NCAA, who I've had my many issues with on the show, they're gonna have to step in and discipline the 2 coaches. Certainly, both will be fined. I mean, that's what you got to do. Grady says, on a serious note, send Howard home the rest of the year. I think they got to investigate and look into whether the assistant coach for Wisconsin said anything. Grady says Wisconsin coach doesn't deserve anything. The only reason I would suspend him, and I agree with you, I would probably suspend Juwan Howard longer than Greg Gard. But my thing is this, okay? Juwan Howard didn't like what he said. Just move on. Just walk away. Don't have thin skin and be like, well, no, this is why. Do you think Juwan Howard's going to care about that? You think any coach is going to care about that? No. Just if he doesn't want to shake your hand, fine. Just move on. Okay, don't go up in his face and blah blah blah. Now, Juwan Howard was wrong for trying to punch him, but John says he gets a game. That Greg Gard likely gets suspended for a game. I think it's gonna be a little bit longer than that. Probably won't be the whole season for him, but I would say if it were me, I'd go 3 to 4 games, just because it's that bad of a look for the sport, for the 2 prestigious programs, from a great conference, the Big Ten. And so, like, now, when people talk about, they need to fire. No. Juwan Howard is not going to be fired. Like, he's not going full body night. Like, if he had, like, literally attacked the guy, like, if he had, like, just gotten out of control, if he went like Isaiah Stewart or something, remember Isaiah Stewart going after LeBron this past November? That's different. But he threw a punch. Didn't like it. If you want to get suspended for the year, I don't have an issue with that. I don't think that is a fireable offense. It's bad, but I wouldn't consider that a fireable offense. So that's my bottom line for it. But at the end of the day, it's a bad look for college basketball, for the 2 programs, and just the 2 coaches in general. Come on, man. Like, behave like adults. The part of Greg Gard, you don't have to explain yourself. Okay, who cares? If you're Juwan Howard, come on, man. You're an adult. Don't throw a punch at the guy. That's ridiculous. That's my takeaway on it. Moving on now. Let's see. And whoa. Here we go. John says, nah, he's not getting fired, but I really think he's getting suspended for the rest of the year. Yeah, I think that is absolutely on the table. That's what the NCAA is going to discuss. And if I get a notification on my phone tonight or tomorrow that says, Michigan Wolverines men's basketball head coach Juwan Howard suspended for the rest of the year would not shock me in the slightest. If he got fired, I'd be shocked because I'd be like, boy, I feel like they're overreacting a little bit. Now, if he had like a history of doing this, that's different. But that's my take. Grady says Wisconsin coach should get fined, in my opinion. There's no question about it. There's no question about it. I mean, the fact that the two teams had to be dragged into this mess is pretty embarrassing. It's kind of like, it reminds you in Little League. I'm sure you know people out there. If you didn't play Little League baseball or maybe basketball or youth football, whatever, soccer. When you got like the parents who are like fighting with each other and think their kid's going to be like the greatest player ever. And the kids are just dragged in like, man, we didn't ask for this, right? That's what it kind of reminded me of, because the two teams like, well, I guess got to defend my coach. So it sucked. It sucked how it went down. But yeah, it's just pretty embarrassing. Grady said, "Do you think Juwan Howard is having bad flashbacks to the Chris Webber?" Do you think Juwan Howard is having bad flashbacks to the Chris Webber timeout? I don't think so, but that's good. Yeah, the infamous Chris Webber calling a timeout in the championship game when they didn't have a timeout, which is a technical foul. And then that was pretty much it for the Fab Five at Michigan back in the 90s. That's a good one. That's the best comment I've seen in a while. But speaking of parents talking about, their kids can be the greatest of all time, let's talk about two guys that an argument can be made for both that they're the greatest of all time. Okay. I've always been on record. I've said this for a long time on Carving It Up, that if you think Jordan's the GOAT, if you think LeBron's the GOAT, I see your argument on both sides. For me, it's Jordan, and then LeBron is a close second. But I've also always said, don't put anybody else in those top two. As great as Kareem is, Kareem's my third greatest player ever. He did not have the impact on basketball, the impact on a team, great as he was, the same way LeBron James and Michael Jordan did. I mean, they are the two greatest ever to play the sport. There is no debate about it. And so we get in these GOAT debates, and it goes on. And, some people throw Kobe in there. Before LeBron, people talk about Magic. People to this day occasionally throw in Kareem, as I mentioned. Those are the two best. It's Michael Jordan, it's LeBron James, and it's the end of discussion. Any intelligent basketball conversation cannot be had if those aren't your top two. Okay, they're in a league of their own. But there was a moment last night that, to me, spoke volumes about who the consensus GOAT is. So what they did, the NBA, they honored the greatest forwards ever, the greatest centers ever, and then the greatest guards ever. So by position. And usually they did, and I hate to say like worst to best, because it's the greatest 75 players ever. Like there's no worst. But they finished with the best player at their position. So LeBron's the greatest forward ever, and he was the last forward to be introduced and honored. For the centers, Kareem was the last center to be introduced because he's the consensus. Everybody knows Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is the greatest center of all time. And then for the guards, Michael Jordan was finished because everybody knows Michael Jordan's the greatest guard ever. By the way, can I just throw this in there that they also said that Steph Curry is the third greatest guard ever? I'm just going to throw that in there. They said they had it in this order. Steph, essentially saying he's the third greatest guard ever, then Magic, then Michael. I'm just saying. But to me, the crowd reactions spoke volumes. Because when they introduced LeBron James, now mind you, the All-Star game was in where? Cleveland. LeBron made that city relevant. I mean, Joakim Noah said years ago, you're taking your kids on vacation to Cleveland? No, you're not. And I'll always appreciate Joakim Noah for that little anecdote. But LeBron gave Cleveland something that they've never had in terms of sports, and that is relevance. At least that they'd never had since Jim Brown with the Cleveland Browns back in the 60s. After he retired, they were nothing. Then LeBron comes around in 2003, makes him relevant, leaves to go to Miami. They burn his jersey. Then they beg for him to come back. He does in 2014. And in 2016, of course, he delivered them a championship. So he's certainly the most beloved Cavalier of all time. He's done unbelievable things in the community. He's built the I Promise School, which already is and is going to change the lives of so many kids. I believe the school goes all the way up to 8th grade. And so just the work that they're doing for these kids, the I Promise Foundation, the I Promise School is just awesome. And so for LeBron, that's Cleveland's guy. Like he's obviously everybody knows he's the king. King James, but he's the king of Cleveland, really. Like, that's a city. That place loves LeBron James. And when they introduced him, of course, the place went nuts. But the last player they introduced, again, they went forwards, centers, guards. For the guards, they went Steph Curry, who got a little booze in there because they're still salty about 3 of the last 4 finals, but that's neither here nor there. They went Magic Johnson. Of course, he got a good ovation. They finished with Michael Jordan. And that place went crazy. He got by far the loudest ovation of any of the players, even above LeBron. And y'all know I love LeBron James, but there's a different level of respect for Michael Jordan. Mind you, this is the same Michael Jordan who hit what was called simply the shot over Greg Elo that won that series over the Cleveland Cavaliers. A year, that season, people talk about, like, the Cavs literally could have won the championship that year. Like, the Bulls were huge underdogs. Excuse me. And Michael Jordan, at the buzzer, to close the game out, to close the series out, obviously iconically pumped his fist over and over and over, signaling that the series was over, and I just ripped the heart out of y'all's chest. Ended the Cavs season. One of the clutchest shots ever hit. Broke Cavs fans' hearts everywhere. Like, that's when they talk about the Cleveland sports curse that lasted 52 years. Like, that's usually at the top of the list. Like, Michael Jordan, the shot. Ernest Biner, the fumble. John Elway, the drive. Things in between. But usually the shot is at the top of the list in Cleveland sports failure infamy. And he got the loudest ovation in Cleveland over LeBron. The hometown kid, the guy who brought the Cavs their first and only championship. I love LeBron James as a human being, what he's done off the court, the I Promise Foundation, we get all that. But there's a different aura to Michael Jordan. Do I think LeBron could be the greatest player of all time when his career's over? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think he's got a shot. Am I totally counting that out? No, because here's the thing. Jordan's cement is dry. LeBron's is, still wet. It's still, his book has not been completed yet. It has not been published. But in Cleveland, Ohio, I mean, the only thing that could have topped it would be Utah and Detroit. It's the only other 2 cities that have more disdain for Michael Jordan. Bad Boy Pistons, obviously, in Detroit, and then the Jazz, Jordan hitting the shot in '98 that ended the Jazz season, and the Bulls won their 6th and final championship. But in Cleveland, Michael Jordan got a louder ovation than LeBron. To me, that told me all I needed to know. 6-time champion, 6-time finals MVP. We get the resume. But that said it all to me. I mean, all these great players getting the ovations that they got. Allen Iverson got a big ovation, and Magic did, and Kareem did. Shaq got a huge ovation. And you notice too, there were videos taken inside the tunnel, when all the players were all gathered up in there and they were talking, and it was really, really cool. That's basketball royalty. The only thing I regret, obviously, and I know, viewers and listeners share the same sentiment. I wish Kobe would have been there. Of course, they honored him. Vanessa was there, obviously, for that, and also to present the Kobe Bryant All-Star MVP, which, by the way, is a beautiful trophy. Certainly to see Steph win that was pretty cool, as I talked about to open the show. But I wish Kobe would have been there. But it's basketball royalty. These are the greatest players in the history of the sport, all in one gathering, all in one group. And you see them joke around and stuff like that, and telling old stories. And anytime Michael Jordan talked, all the attention turned to Michael. Like that says something. And maybe that'll be LeBron in 10 years, or, whenever they do the 100 greatest basketball players of all time, and, 2047, when LeBron's there, like, maybe that'll be like the sort of the energy that LeBron will get. Who knows? But as for today, that told me today what I needed to know currently about the GOAT debate. LeBron could still take that crown from Jordan. Make no mistake about it. But Michael Jordan, not just by his contemporaries, by the fans in a rival city, still has the respect of the whole NBA world as the greatest who ever did it. I thought it was really telling. I thought that spoke volumes. First of all, I didn't even think Michael was going to be there. Like, he was, obviously he owns, owns the car. It raised Bubba Wallace Daytona 500. By the way, shout out to Bubba Wallace, man. Came that close to winning the Daytona 500. It was a crazy finish. And, when I saw they were doing the ceremony, I'm like, man, it sucks that Jordan's not going to be here. Well, guess he flew, up from Daytona to Cleveland to be there for the ceremony. But it was a really cool moment. Really cool moment. The halftime show, I don't know the exact time, how long it lasted. It felt like it lasted 30 to 45 minutes. But nevertheless, man, that was awesome. I mean, obviously, the two members of the Inside the NBA crew, Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal, both were honored. I mean, I'm probably going to watch it again tonight. Like, it was amazing. It was amazing ceremony, amazing recognition of the best who ever did it. With Michael Jordan, again, getting the loudest ovation. But moving on to a guy who actually was on that, deservedly on that top 75 list, Chris Paul, who, this is a big story, is out for 6 to 8 weeks with a broken thumb. So, killer injury for him. He's had issues with that thumb before. And for Chris Paul individually, my buddy Barry Grant Jr., shout out to him. He calls him Black Cat Chris because, like, just at the worst of times, like, he always gets hurt. Like, the worst times, Chris Paul goes down. Whether it's in the playoffs, whether it's in regular season, and then that injury lingers for the playoffs, he never, gets the opportunity to be 100% in the playoffs. It sucks for Chris. Maybe his size at about only 6 foot tall, and how physical he plays, maybe that does hurt him a little bit. I mean, y'all know I've always had a ton of admiration for Chris Paul. I said, and heck, I'll reiterate it today. Do I think the Warriors are going to win the finals? You're darn right I do. Can the Suns? No question. And if the Suns do win the finals, that, to me, elevates Chris Paul into the top 5 point guards of all time, because he'll elevate into the top 3 assists. Like, that's kind of the point guard stat, right, is assists. So to me, it would be like Magic, obviously, is the greatest point guard ever. Steph, I'd probably go Isaiah. No, I'd go Oscar Robertson, Isaiah Thomas, and then to finish it off, Chris Paul. Because you say, well, Stockton's got the assist record up, but Chris Paul had a ring. And Stockton had 2 shots at a ring with Karl Malone, albeit against Michael Jordan, the Bulls, but that stuff matters. Like, all 5 point guards in that category would have something in common. Champion. Oscar won 1 or 2, if I'm not mistaken. Magic won 5. Steph's won 3, going on 4, in my opinion. Isaiah won 2. And hopefully Chris, hopefully not this year, but if Chris Paul got a ring, he's in that top 5 group. But as for Phoenix, this is a really tough loss. And this is really the greatest opportunity that I think we can get to see, because I think the answer is yes. But we got to see it play out. Is Devin Booker a superstar? He's a star. He's a scoring machine. There's no question about that. Is he a superstar? When a guy goes down, can he carry the team? Look, they're spotted 6.5 games over the Warriors with only with 25 games to go. Can Devin Booker get them across the finish line with that number 1 seed? If so, I'll have to give it up. Because Phoenix is a great basketball team still. I mean, they have Mikal Bridges, they have DeAndre Ayton and Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder. They have some ballers on that team now. But Devin Booker's got to show up and be that guy. So, to me, for Phoenix, this is a tough one. Because Chris Paul brings the leadership, accountability, toughness on the defensive end, creates good shots for himself and others offensively. He's been the same guy for his whole career now. And to me, along with Monty Williams, he's kind of the identity of the Suns. Now, for a short time last year, we saw Devin Booker was able to carry the Suns, right? Remember, the Suns swept the Nuggets in the second round. By the way, a note on Nikola Jokic I want to throw in just a second, but they swept the Nuggets in the second round, and everybody's feeling good. Phoenix is feeling good, and Chris Paul catches COVID. You're like, oh, there we go. He got him. Man, he can't stay healthy, even if it's COVID. He's out for the first 2 games of a series, and what does Devin Booker do? Balls out, and they win both games at home and get a 2-0 lead. Now, Chris Paul eventually came in, struggled mightily in games 3 through 5, and then closed out the series in his old stomping grounds at the old Staples Center in Game 6 against the Clippers to get his Suns to the finals. But, in that short little, burst there for Devin Booker, yes, he could carry the team. Can he do it over a long stretch of time? A game or 2? I give you points for that, especially if it's in the Western Conference Finals. That's big time. But can you get your team to the playoffs? You're spotted 6.5 games over the Warriors, 25 games left. Can you get them across the finish line? Best record in the league, home court advantage. You get Chris Paul back, and you pursue your goal of the championship, which you fell short of last year. But when I heard that, when Allie LaForce said on TNT last night, I've got some bad news. Chris Paul's out 6 to 8 weeks. I'm like, whoa, that's huge. That's a killer for Phoenix. No question, they still got a great basketball team. No question. But listen, I'm going to be watching. I've always, I love Phoenix more than everybody else. I don't know why. For the life of me, I don't know why everybody just dismissed Phoenix going into the season. They're saying, it's the Lakers and Clippers once Kawhi gets back, and Denver and this team and that team. And, there was a little bit of Golden State sprinkled in there. People underrated Golden State. But when nobody's talking about Phoenix, I'm like, guys, this team played in the finals last year. They got past all those teams that everybody's talking about. They got past all of them to the finals. And then obviously they ultimately fell short to Milwaukee, but they did get to the finals and won 2 games. So, and I'm like, they're bringing back everybody. I don't know what there is to not like. But they do have Monty Williams as a coach. Devin Booker's big time. Grady says if the Lakers can get on a roll, they better hope they get Phoenix. If Chris Paul's out, I agree. I don't know if I give the Lakers a shot to win the series. I give them a shot to maybe get to a Game 7, but that would still be in Phoenix, and that's a loud home crowd. So, I mean, if you ask me if I were a Laker fan, which, thank God I'm not, but if you asked me if I was a Laker fan who I'd rather, play, if, say, Chris Paul missed the first 2 games, and they said 6 to 8, so 6 weeks from now would be before the end of the regular season. 8 weeks would be right at the start of the playoffs. So we got to see how that plays out. But if you ask me as a Lakers fan who I'd rather play, if Chris Paul missed the first 2 games, Suns, Warriors, absolutely Phoenix. No question. Because Golden State hopefully would be healthy by then. See, do you want to play the dynasty? Steph, Clay, Draymond, guys like Jordan Poole, and we'll see. John has a little bit of breaking news here. So does Grady. They both put it in. Juwan Howard got 5 games. Okay. So 5 games, that's about, 2.5 weeks. I figured it'd be longer than that. I figured it'd be a little longer than that. I said a month, so that'd have been what? 8 games? Yeah, it'd been about 8 games. I'm surprised that's all he got. Has there been, please let me know in the comments. I'm trying to, check on my social media. John says, I'm surprised. I kind of am too. I'm kind of surprised as well. Let's see. Has Greg Gard gotten any sort of discipline yet? Doesn't look like that's no. All I see here is that Tom Izzo, great coach of the Michigan State Spartans, said, I don't know if I agree with Coach Izzo here. He said the brawl reminded him of the Malice at the Palace. I wouldn't go that far. The Malice at the Palace was just awful. I mean, awful. But yeah, there you go. Oh, it's the rest of the regular season, though. Okay, so 5 games here. That's the rest of the regular season, according to Yahoo Sports, who first reported the news. And on this show, got to give my guys credit, John, and Grady, for reporting the news. That's interesting. So basically, he'll be back by the Big Ten tournament, to try and see if Michigan can maybe make a run to get back into the NCAA tournament this year. But maybe that's why he only got 5 games, because they wanted him to be back. They wanted, because look, maybe they factored, and look, these companies, these organizations do this. They factor in like, Michigan's a big brand. Like, we'd like them to get in the tournament. I'm not saying like there's just conspiracy, but y'all know I hate conspiracy theories. But who's to say they were like, okay, we're going to give them the rest of the regular season and then say, okay, have them back for the Big Ten tournament. It's good for our brand. If Michigan's in the NCAA tournament, the best 64 teams in the nation, March Madness, the whole bit. Kentucky's going to be there, and Duke, and all the big brands. Maybe they want Michigan to be there. I mean, I don't know if that factored too much in the decision, but it's entirely possible. So 5-game suspension for Juwan Howard for the altercation yesterday with Greg Gard, the head coach of the Wisconsin Badgers, after the Badgers won by 14, and Juwan Howard took exception to a timeout called by Greg Gard. Very, very interesting. I wouldn't say it's like a slap on the wrist, but it's kind of a step above that. Like, I don't think they made any kind of statement about that. So, hopefully no other incidents like this happen in college basketball, not just the rest of this year, but I think everybody kind of got a good message from this year, but next year. So we'll see. March Madness is approaching, folks. I mean, we got about a month left before March Madness, and I gotta say, now it's only like a week after the Super Bowl, and I'm always like kind of crossing my fingers, a little scared about this time in the sports calendar year, because once the Super Bowl's over, it's like, okay, just get to March Madness, and then once March Madness is over, the NBA playoffs start like 2 weeks after that, so then you got like 2 months of content, so you just gotta cross your fingers. But we've had a lot to talk about. I mean, there was even a story today about Tom Brady, about how he was reportedly frustrated with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and just, sort of what was going on over there. And my takeaway is, and I hear a lot of people say, well, he was frustrated with the Patriots and he was frustrated with the Buccaneers. Like, maybe Tom Brady's the problem. His frustration with New England, first of all, he played there 20 years. So he's frustrated for a while. He wasn't frustrated all 20 years, but he did play there for 2 decades. That's a long time. Like, that's like a fourth of somebody's lifetime. That's 25% of your life he spent in Foxborough, Massachusetts with the Patriots. And so, he left New England for a change of scenery, an opportunity to go win championships, because he saw the Patriots. And I'm sorry, Grady, I know you're a Patriots fan, but they were not contenders at that time. Like, we saw, they got bounced immediately in the playoffs that year by the Tennessee Titans. And so Tom's like, okay, my receivers are trash. Okay, Julian Edelman and James White are my best receivers. That's going to be hard to win in the playoffs. And Gronk's retired and the defense isn't quite as good. Like, I need a change of scenery. And so he goes to Tampa, and here's why I think his frustration was with the Buccaneers. Tom, more than any, like, it's like to Kobe level. Maybe not quite as much as Kobe, but routine driven describes Tom Brady. Like, he retired because he wanted to spend time with family, and in the same breath, focus on his personal brand, TB12, and this new Brady brand that he's got going. Like, that was why he retired. He didn't retire because, like a lot of players do, because of injuries. We know that. Or because of age. Well, he could still play at 44. That was evident. But also, he loved the training process. He loves the routine, getting up every day, watching film, working on my body, practice, all those different things. Like he loves that aspect of it. So, I think in Tampa, which I've been to Tampa a couple times, it's a very kind of a loose culture. It's I mean, not like Miami, but loose. Not saying there's not hardworking people in Tampa, because that is obviously not the case. There's hardworking people everywhere. But it's kind of a party town in a way, right? Again, not like Miami, but like Tom's very like football. Like if I'm playing football, I got to be all in. That's part of the reason he retired. Because he said, I'm not going to play. As soon as I'm not all in football, I'm not playing another snap. Like that's how he was. Grady says, and maybe he's got a point here. Antonio Brown said it sent him over the edge, in his opinion. I think the Antonio Brown situation didn't help. I think that the drama and how that went down. But to be fair, I mean, Tom is the only reason Antonio Brown even got to Tampa. Grady says, I think that was probably the straw that broke the camel's back. They made him realize, I don't have to be doing this stuff anymore. And if that's the case, the Antonio Brown situation, and y'all know I love Tom Brady. He's one of my favorite athletes ever. But Tom brought AB to Tampa, just like he brought AB to New England. And that lasted like a game before even more stuff about AB was starting to come out. So Bob Kraft's like, yeah, I got to get rid of him. And so, he comes to Tampa, and Bruce Arians didn't want him. Buccaneers front office, Jason Light, they didn't want him. And, could see why. And very well could be the case. Maybe that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Beforehand, we didn't really hear. We had heard some reports their Super Bowl winning season, because remember, they got off to sort of a clunky start. They were 7-5. At the time, didn't look like a Super Bowl contender. But Brady and Arians, the reports that they weren't getting along horribly well. And so, the reports that their relationship wasn't the greatest last year, if I kind of believe those reports, don't know if they're 1,000% true, but I'd be kind of shocked if it were to come out that, no, they were on great terms. I don't know about that. Like, I just don't know if their personalities really gelled in the way. Like, Brady and Belichick got on each other's nerves. But a lot of times the people, this is just in life, that are just like us are the ones that drive us the craziest. I mean, seriously, like that's how it works. And so, certainly Belichick's more of a dry personality than Tom, but both are routine driven, all about football. That's the only goal. That's what we're doing. We're football, football, football. We're trying to compete for a championship. Like that kind of gelled. Not to say Bruce Arians doesn't care about that. He obviously does. Not to the level Bill does. Not to the level Bill does. So maybe that drove Tom crazy. I think he loved his teammates. We saw those pictures he put on his IG stories, or he'd be tweeting about his teammates. Like he loved his teammates. Antonio Brown, of course, drove him and everybody nuts. But outside of that, I think he loved, playoff Lenny. And of course he loves Gronk. That's his BFF. And Mike Evans, who's a great dude, and the guys in the defense. I think the AB situation, Grady, I do think that factored. But I think ultimately it was, hey, it's kind of loose here. And being 44 years old, I'm not going to be here long enough to completely change the culture. Like, he's not going to do that. So now, do I think that played factor in his retirement? No. Because if Tom Brady mentally was all into football, I think it would have came back to Tampa, to be honest with you. With San Francisco, I know there's a lot of people saying, hey, he could come out of retirement and play with the 49ers. I think Tom's done. Like, I really genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, think we've seen Tom Brady play his last snap in the NFL. Do I hope I'm wrong? Darn right, I hope I'm wrong. But I'm telling you, in San Francisco, I think they know what they have in Trey Lance. I think I know what they have in Trey Lance. And I'm telling you, folks, he's going to be a superstar. He is going to be a superstar. And so, is Tom Brady better than Trey Lance today? Absolutely no freaking question. But he is going to be 45 at the start of next football season. So would it stunt Trey Lance's growth? Would it stunt his confidence to have Tom Brady there and have to be the guy? It's different. It's a whole different story to be replacing Jimmy Garoppolo or to replace Tom Brady, even if it's for a year. Like, that's why I'm not a Mac Jones guy, but I kind of feel bad for him in a way, because obviously I had Cam Newton in there for a year, but Mac Jones is really kind of the replacement for Tom Brady. So in a way, I kind of feel sorry for him. I feel bad for whoever Alabama's coach is when Nick Saban retires, and just all the above. Grady says it had to be an okay personal relationship, but a good working relationship between Brady and BA. I mean, those were very successful 2 seasons. Absolutely. Won the Super Bowl the first year. Second year, came up short against the Rams, but they did get the 2 seed. They went 13-4. Tom in a phenomenal year. I thought it was of the years Tom was in his 40s. I think it was absolutely the best season he had in terms of him being in his 40s. But, I don't think it was the perfect fit between he and Bruce. Like I think, he didn't get along great with Belichick, but I think their professional relationship really worked. I think Tom would get along well with Sean McVay. I think he would maybe at least professionally, maybe not personally, but professionally get along with Sean Payton. Like, I think those type of coaches he sort of vibes with, like he gels with. So I think that factors. By the way, I think that's why he got along with Byron Leftwich. I think Byron Leftwich is somewhat similar. Not saying he's going to be as good, obviously, as Belichick, but as McVay or Peyton. But I think Byron Leftwich, when it's all said and done, whenever he gets a job in the next couple of years, is going to be a heck of a head coach. And that they seem to have a great relationship, offensive coordinator to quarterback. But all right, spend a few minutes talking about the Tom Brady story. But it goes back to my point. More than ever, maybe it's social media, maybe it's, I don't know, but man, like sports normally does not provide this many stories in late February. Like there's some NBA stuff, but that's about it. Like really the All-Star game, like you're just hoping like something nuts happens at the All-Star game. God, that dunk contest sucked. It was terrible. It was I mean, now I get it, it's tough I'm not asking for them to replicate Vince Carter or, Michael Jordan, Dominique Wilkins, or heck, even Aaron Gordon and Zach LaVine, which is the greatest dunk contest I've ever seen back in 2016. Not asking you to replicate that. But John Morant, would you please do the dunk contest? Please. He had a couple of dunks last night in the All-Star game. I'm like, sure could have used that on Saturday night because it was awful. And my man Juan Toscano Anderson of the Warriors was in it, and he had a dunk over Andrew Wiggins, but it was terrible. Not to take any shine away from Obi Toppin, but jeez. All right. Last topic of the day. Sticking with basketball, going to the Los Angeles Lakers. It might as well be spelled LOSS Angeles Lakers because it just continues to crumble. I did not buy into the Lakers as a championship contender this year. I didn't think it was going to get this bad. Being 4 games under 500, just fighting just to get in the playoffs. I did not see that being the case. Before I get into that, Grady asks, do you have any thoughts on the situation brewing between Thibodeau and the Knicks? Tom Thibodeau, the head coach. I don't understand why people are talking about him getting fired. The Knicks have have a skeleton for the first time in years. For Tom Thibodeau, my thing is this. I think he can rub people the wrong way, but I think for the Knicks, he's kind of the group of talent that they have. I think he's the perfect coach. They're going to play hard every night. They're going to play defense. I think the issue with the Knicks is last year was kind of a one-hit wonder. And, to a certain degree, we kind of saw that in the playoffs. Like Trae Young just, single-handedly just obliterated the Knicks in that first-round series and became Madison Square Garden's biggest villain. But I think to a certain degree, this is not to hate on him because he's a really good player. We overestimated Julius Randle. Or I don't even want to throw myself into that because I like Julius. I don't think he's, a superstar. I think the Knicks kind of overestimated Julius Randle into being like their franchise guy. Like as to be like the best player on a team that can win a championship. Julius Randle is not the best player on a championship team. He can be like the third best player, maybe even the second in some instances, depending on who the best player is. But that does not, no. But when I fire Tom Thibodeau, no, absolutely not. I think in Chicago, it kind of ran its course. I think for Minnesota, it was not a good fit for what they had there, certainly with Jimmy Butler. I think with the Knicks, sort of, I call them like sort of the sort of like the island of misfit toys in a way, like the island of the misfit players. And they overachieved last year. And the expectations went up this year. And, I'm not even sure if they'll get in the play-in tournament. There's probably a better chance than not that they won't even get in the play-in tournament. One of the top 10 seeds in the Eastern Conference. So that's my take on it. But when I fired Thibodeau, unless the situation just plummeted, unless there was like an altercation, not Juwan Howard level, but unless there was like a beef between he and a player, I wouldn't fire him. At least I wouldn't. But again, back to the Los Angeles Lakers. I didn't buy into them as a championship contender for a few reasons. One of them was Russell Westbrook. I've always said Russell Westbrook's a great player. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. That doesn't make him a winning player. There's a difference. Like Russell Westbrook's, I always use the example. Russell Westbrook's better than Manu Ginobili, Andre Iguodala, but the two of those guys are winning players. They got rings, and they've contributed to their teams winning those rings. And so, now I don't want to get into like a Westbrook rant, but Westbrook wasn't. I thought the fit would be terrible. It has been. I thought the roster was old. I think there was a stat like 6 of the top 12 oldest players in the NBA are playing for the Los Angeles Lakers. So 6 of the 12 oldest guys are playing for one team. That's a recipe for disaster. I thought the fits with guys like Kent Bazemore, Dwight Howard, DeAndre Jordan, they traded Rondo, Wayne Ellington. It was not going to work. I didn't think it'd disintegrate to this point. And again, and it feels like today's show, I'm kind of bashing LeBron, and I don't want to do that because, hey, to his credit, he hit the walk-off. He hit the buzzer. It wasn't a buzzer beater, but he hit the walk-off shot to win the All-Star game last night in Cleveland. But I kind of get on LeBron right now because there's a report that came out yesterday that Klutch Sports, LeBron's agency, Rich Paul, his agent, LeBron, one thing I've always admired about him is he's kept it's not a situation of nepotism or anything like that, right? Like his buddies from when he grew up, he's elevated them. They've become, they've promoted his brand. They built their own personal brands. Heck, Rich Paul is with Adele right now. So, they're doing well. But there's a report that Klutch Sports is, according to Eric Pincus of Bleacher Report, James representatives at Klutch Sports are not pleased with the Lakers. Their relationship is, quote, at its lowest point amid an utterly disappointing season. Pincus said that the team may have to make a key decision on James this summer since he can become a free agent after next season. And basically, if you read more into the report, the frustration is with Rob Pelinka, who's the general manager. Now, you guys know I think Rob Pelinka is underqualified to be the Lakers GM. The only reason he got the job is because he was Kobe Bryant's agent. It's the only reason he got the job. And so he's not a general manager. He's not a Bob Myers of the Golden State Warriors. He's not a Sam Presti of the Oklahoma City Thunder. He is not in the level of those guys. Not even close. When you have LeBron James, it masks a lot of your deficiencies. That said, the report is, if I can pull it up here, the report is that, quote, it reached a boil, the relationship between Klutch Sports and Rob Pelinka. It reached a boil when Pelinka refused to trade Russell Westbrook and a future first-round pick for Houston Rockets guard and Klutch client John Wall. First of all, John Wall would be, you think Westbrook's a bad fit? John Wall would have been an even worse fit. It'd have been all, I got nothing love for John Wall as a guy, but he'd have been a terrible fit with LeBron. Can't shoot, is hurt all the time. Like Westbrook is not the best player in a championship team. Heck, I don't even think he's a role player in a championship team. Like, his game does not fit that. But my issue is, and I don't think Rob Pelinka is a good GM, but Rob Pelinka had a deal in place to go get Buddy Hield, who I said last summer, like, if they got Buddy Hield, maybe not a home run for the Lakers, but a big A+ for the Lakers. Because you got Buddy Hield, who's one of the 5 best shooters in the world, and LeBron, who loves shooters. That sounds like it works. And LeBron said no. Klutch Sports said no. We want Russell Westbrook. We want a star player. And when the trade went down last July, I said, this sinks the Lakers. They're done. Like, they're not going to be championship contenders, and we're seeing that play out. But the fact that they pushed Rob Pelinka to where he's like, I don't want to piss off LeBron. I want to piss off Klutch Sports. I'll get Westbrook. And now they're mad that they won't trade Westbrook. Like, come on, man. Like, there's some hypocrisy going on here. LeBron's the second greatest player ever. Might be the greatest when it's all said and done. He's a terrible general manager. Kind of like Michael Jordan in a way. Although, MJ has at least drafted well the last few years. But the point of all of it is, you pushed Rob Pelinka to go get Westbrook, and then you're mad that he won't trade him months later. I mean, come on, man. And for John Wall, really? No, that's a disaster waiting to happen. So, unless they got a Buddy Hield, unless they got, one of the guards from Sacramento, whether it was the Aaron Fox or Tyrese Halliburton. By the way, good job on the Pacers. They got a player in Tyrese Halliburton. That guy's going to be really good. But come on. There's got to be at least some level of accountability here. I love Klutch Sports and what they've done, but geez. You pushed for the Lakers to get Russ. And then you're pissed that they won't trade him. Come on, man. That's ridiculous. Got a few comments here. John says, talking about Rob Pelinka will be fired and Vogel. I've never even been a big Frank Vogel fan. But the blame that this guy's getting is ridiculous. Okay? He's a defensive coach. Lakers fans knew. The Lakers organization knew. The players, certainly LeBron, knew. He's never had great rotations. That's his bugaboo. That's his weakness. But even last year, when the Lakers were the 7 seed, even when LeBron was out and AD was out, and they dealt with all kinds of injuries, they were still the number 1 ranked defensive team in basketball. But when you get a bunch of old legs in there, guys like Carmelo Anthony, who even when he was young, never played defense. So now he's just going to all of a sudden at age 37 play defense? Doesn't work that way. By the way, Vogel never wanted Westbrook, and now we're blaming Vogel for Westbrook being Westbrook? Should Rob get fired? Yes. Vogel, I'd be more lenient. Because Vogel wasn't a problem when they were winning the championship, and Vogel wasn't the issue last year when they were the best defensive team in basketball. That's all I got to say. At least about Frank Vogel. Grady says the Lakers just need to blow up the front office and coaching staff this summer and let a new GM make a decision on this roster. And I wouldn't be shocked if they blow up the team, honestly. They won their championship. They had a good run, but it might be time to rebuild this thing. LeBron doesn't have a no-trade clause, so they can just send him anywhere. I remember LeBron said on The Shop, his show on HBO, that he usually does with Maverick Carter, his manager. And they suggest, hey, LeBron, what if you get traded to like Orlando? And LeBron said, I'm just going to retire then. I don't think they're going to trade LeBron. I don't, unless LeBron makes it abundantly clear, hey, I don't want to be here anymore. But Bronny is balling out at Sierra Canyon High School. And so, his family just moved there. Obviously, I think LeBron, when he retires, is going to, reside full-time in Los Angeles. Like, he's got his business there and this and that. And his net worth has doubled since he went to Los Angeles just in the last 4 years. Like, it's clearly been great for his personal brand. So he's going to stay in LA in his, personal life away from basketball, and certainly when he calls it quits. But I think in general, that's not going to work. And I'll talk about the front office in just a second. Here's the interesting question asked Grady Edwards. Would Cleveland give up what they have for LeBron in a trade? Depends on what they do in the playoffs, and it depends on what they do next year. Now, if LeBron becomes available for trade, then Cleveland's going to have to make a real decision. If they add LeBron, what they are saying is, okay, we know, obviously, we're a better team with LeBron showing up. Duh. But what we're saying is, because we got some young talent right now. Evan, I don't think they'd trade Mobley. Garland or Mobley, one of those two would have to stay. I think they would probably go with Mobley. But Mobley, Garland, Jared Allen, the young guys that they have. Colin Sexton is their 6th man. Now, he's a free agent this summer, so maybe they could do like a sign-and trade or something. I don't know how that works, but they've got young talent that's doing really good things for them. So what they be saying is, okay, we're going to be better with LeBron. We're going after a championship, and after that's run its course, we're going to suck for the next 5 years. For Cleveland, it'd be interesting, because they've got their championship with LeBron back in 2016. It depends on how they put the roster together, because, again, they'd be giving up all their assets to get LeBron. That's really interesting. If it happens next offseason, I think it'll be an easier decision. But let's say Cleveland, this year they're like the 5 seed. They say they're the 5 seed and they lose in 5 games in the first round. And then next year they come back and like they get eliminated in the play-in tournament or something, then I think they'd do it. But let's say they won a playoff series this year. And then let's say next year, dare I say, they win 2 playoff series. I'm just throwing out hypotheticals and got to the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think they'd do it then. Because at that point, LeBron would be, 39? I don't think they would do that. Unless they drafted Bronny. Because LeBron's made it abundantly clear. Wherever Bronny gets drafted, I'm going. I don't care if it's by trade, free agency. I'm going where Bronny's going. And so that's how that's going. But on the Lakers front office, by the way, I told y'all earlier in the show I'd bring up something about Nikola Jokic. So a little off topic here, but Nikola Jokic, the guy who everybody's tried to convince me was the MVP last year, he wasn't on the floor in the entire fourth quarter of the All-Star game. They put Jared Allen in. I love Jared Allen. He's a great defensive player, but he's not better than Jokic. So is that your MVP? I'm just saying, should have been Steph or Chris Paul. I'm just saying, last year. But back to the Lakers front office, and I talked about this last Thursday. The Lakers don't get enough credit for how dysfunctional they are. Because you say, well, Rob Pelinka is not a good general manager, and you're right, he's not. He's not. But at the same time, Jeannie Buss hired him. Rob Pelinka can go. Frank Vogel can go. You can blow up the roster. The Buss family is still in control. And they are not near as good as their father, Dr. Jerry Buss. So, this Lakers front office, folks, is a mess. And if you don't have a good front office, you can forget about contending for a championship. LeBron has been so great since he got to LA. Especially that championship year in 2020. It masked a lot of their deficiencies in the front office. They made so many bad moves and trades and free agent signings. LeBron occasionally kind of masks that. We kind of forget that. When he goes off for 35-point triple-doubles, once every 3 weeks, we're talking about LeBron the king. We forget. It took 35, 10, and 11 to beat the Jazz, barely. I don't think that was his exact numbers, but he balled out against Utah, had to score like 10 in the fourth quarter, 10 straight points, just to get the Lakers back into the game. And Utah's a really good basketball team. They're not a championship contender. I'm sorry. Love Donovan Mitchell. Outside of that, I'm not sold on Utah. So, this is not a well-run Lakers franchise at all. And I have a feeling that this is only going to get worse because they're like 6 games back of Denver. Let me check the standings right now so I can get this accurate. In the stat, because the Lakers are the 9 seed right now, so they're in the play-in tournament. They're 6 games back of the Denver Nuggets with 25 games left, and I don't necessarily anticipate them making a comeback. I assume, not sure when, Jamal Murray is going to come back pretty soon for the Nuggets, which will be a huge boost for them. I don't anticipate them giving up that 6-game lead. I don't. So the Lakers are going to find themselves in the play-in. They're going to hope that they're the 8 seed so that it's not like lose or go home. Or I'm sorry, win or go home for them. It's only going to get worse, folks. It's a poorly run franchise. It's not the Knicks, but it's a poorly run franchise that they've got over there in Los Angeles, California. The Clippers, who are a joke of an organization historically, are far better run than the Lakers. You got Jerry West, who's, in my opinion, the greatest basketball executive ever. Steve Ballmer, has been a great owner, 20 times better than that bum Donald Sterling that used to own the team. Steve Ballmer's done a great job. They've got a new arena coming soon. Listen, the Clippers are always going to be the Clippers, but they are far better run than the Lakers. They are far better set up for the future than the Lakers. No question about it. Grady agrees with me on the whole Nikola Jokic thing. He says last season was the worst MVP race I've ever seen. It's not to diminish Nikola Jokic whatsoever. He's a great player. He's the second best big in all of basketball to Joel Embiid. He is a do-it-all center. He's probably the greatest do-it-all center we've seen since Wilt. He's not on that level, obviously, but since Wilt. But he was not the MVP last year. MVPs do not get swept in the second round. I'm sorry. Okay, when you got talent on your roster, you've got Aaron Gordon. Okay, you got like guys like that in the starting lineup who can make things happen for you. Not dissing the Nuggets, losing to the Suns. You can't get swept. You cannot get swept. I can assure you, Steph Curry with an inferior roster last year would not have gotten swept had the Warriors made the playoffs. I can guarantee you that, because Steph's never been swept in his life. I mean, Michael's gotten swept. LeBron's gotten swept. I'm not saying Steph's on that level, but I'm just saying. The Steph Curry Appreciation Show, that's pretty much what this was. I got the hat from back when he broke the record in Madison Square Garden last December, 2,974 threes. Sorry for the podcast audience. That's what I'm wearing, 2,974 and counting. He's above 3,000 now. I've got my Steph. Let's see if I can get this up here. Nope. That's hard to see. There we go. There's Steph with the Warriors logo after he broke the record. Just pay some respect to the greatest shooter of all time, the greatest Warrior of all time. One more question. We'll get out of here. Grady says, what do you think you can get for AD in a trade? You can get draft picks. You can get a couple assets. I'm not sure. It all depends on who you're trading with, and it depends on what the other team is trying to do. Right? If you're in conversations with Portland to get Damian Lillard, they're going to ask for a lot. As for the Lakers, what are they going to be asking for Dame? They'll probably give you Anthony Davis. I said last offseason that they were going to trade AD, go get Damian Lillard. In general, I would say couple first rounders, an all-star caliber. I'm not talking like solid all-star. I'm not talking like Devin Booker, but I'm saying a solid all-star starter and maybe like a good bench player. That's what I think you can get for Anthony Davis. Because, he's 28 years old, and the dude is made of glass. Anthony, I've always said on the show, AD does not stand for Anthony Davis. It stands for always down. It feels like every single game he's holding his knee, he's holding his ankle, he's holding his elbow, his shoulder. It's like, man, this dude cannot stay healthy. Some of it, he hasn't taken horribly great care of his body. Draymond Green kind of exposed that after last season, kind of let the cat out the bag. Maybe some of it's his size, but, Nikola Jokic stays pretty healthy. And he's a center. AD doesn't even want to be a center at his size. And if AD wanted to, he could be the best big in basketball. He could be better than Joel Embiid. But I feel like the commitment from Embiid is greater than that of Anthony Davis. That's sort of my take on it. But that'd be interesting. I think trading AD, I don't think trading LeBron's a possibility unless he just flat out asks out. I think trading AD is a strong possibility for the Los Angeles Lakers this offseason, this summer. Because Lord knows they ain't winning no championship in 2022. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. I appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving It Up on Thursday, as always, at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. Also, be sure to catch out the Carving It Up podcast if you're listening to that. We appreciate you as well. You've been listening on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. Check out the Carving It Up on YouTube, at Carving It Up Podcast on Instagram, on Twitter, at Carving It Up Pod, and on Facebook, Bryson Carver, and you should see the Carving It Up logo come up. So until Thursday, hope everybody has a great week. Happy President's Day. And see you on Thursday. Stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out. MVP. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.